For the Emancipation of the Niger Delta, a militant group based in Nigeria's oil-producing Niger Delta region, has threatened to resume attacks on Nigeria's oil facilities from April 5. That's of course tomorrow. This follows reports of oil thefts that have cut Nigeria's oil production to levels of about 2.2 million barrels per day. That is of course lower than the 2.5 million barrels per day benchmark for the 2013 budget. In the studios today, we have Okoyemi Agbaje, the CEO of RTC Advisory Services, and Akemi Oshinobi, Director at Riverbank Capital, to talk us through the implications of this news. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Okoyemi, I want to start with you. Clearly, it becomes worrying when you begin to hear about these types of threats. We've heard these types of threats in the past. It seems the Joint Task Force of the government have found ways to curb those attacks, at least over the last 1 year or so. What are your thoughts about this, and how worried are you about it?
Well, I will be more worried now because there's a background. Henry Oka, the main leader, has just been jailed in South Africa. There's the political heating up over the run-up to 2015. I'm sure some of the militants are apprehensive about what will happen to their president, Goodluck Jonathan, in 2015. And then these guys are better resourced. There's been a lot of stealing of crude, a lot of crude oil theft, and we know that some of these activities can be traced to the militants. So there is a more fertile environment, both in terms of motivation and in terms of finance, for a heightened activity.
So you think we should be more worried this time than in the past?
Oh, certainly. At least more so than at any other time since 2009, when the amnesty was.
Clearly, the amnesty has been at least effective in terms of curbing attacks. But Yemi, I want to get you into the discussion now. Clearly, this is something that would worry investors. One thing that, of course, has been worrying investors recently has been the oil theft. I want you to get your thoughts on how you link this story to the implications for the oil economy in Nigeria, given the oil theft we've seen recently.
Well, the news around the country hasn't been very encouraging in the last year or two. We're seeing a lot of asset sales by IOCs, by international oil majors who have better fiscal regimes and better investment opportunities around the world. We've also seen a stalling of new investments over the last 2 years because of the non-passage of the PIB. Even though the PIB got some attention recently, it was announced that it passed second reading in the Senate. But a lot of their concerns seem to be more related to the political things, minister's power, president's discretion. No comments on the real meat, the fiscal regimes that are being discussed and argued back and forth.
And then on top of all that, we now have this
So you have that background again with the theft, where the theft in Niger Delta, where oil prices have done their best. They've hovered around 110.
Great time.
Yeah,
if we were producing
and
well.
Yet our goal to actually produce more and increase reserves, all that has fallen by the wayside. So if you then add a layer of insecurity on top of the uncertainty regarding regulation and production, and then it's not a good environment at all. And then you hear other news that across the globe that has indirect effect on us. Centrica has signed a long-term agreement with the first LNG exporter from the U.S. We've been worried about declining exports to the U.S., sending most of our cargoes to China and India at reduced rates, and I think you're going to see, again, layering this on top of it makes it a bit worrying for the oil and gas economy in Nigeria.
When you bring this news and juxtapose this against what is happening in the north, you just get a sense that the rating of Nigeria as an investment destination may be under some pressure here, but we continue to see the flows. We continue to see a lot of FDI flows into Nigeria. Your thoughts about how investors have become immune, if you like, to some of this news?
Actually, from the figures I saw very recently, FDI in Nigeria declined in 2012 compared with 2011 figures. Yes, the Lagos economy, the mainstream Southwest Lagos economy, half of Nigeria, has not yet seen the consequences of Boko Haram. And of course, like we said, there's been peace in the Niger Delta, so the Rivers State, Port Harcourt, the Southeast has also not suffered from that. But as we go forward, like he said, what the oil majors are talking about is not just the PIB,
right,
but a good PIB from their point of view. which is one with the right fiscal terms, which is one that would encourage people to invest in deep water and gas, which is one that will revive new investment in Nigeria's oil sector. That isn't happening, and that's a factor in the decline in FDI. And then if we then have southern insecurity, which is in the oil region, if MEND indeed carries out its threat, then there will be significant impact on foreign direct investment and even on GDP.
Absolutely. Clearly, if those threats are carried out, there will be even more concerns. But talk us through some of the deals that we're seeing with respect to, regardless of the fact that the PIB hasn't been passed. I think locally there are still some transactions going on in the oil and gas space. Talk us through that.
Yes, what you see is a lot of maintenance type capital expenditures for those who in the last 2 to 3 years bought assets from Shell. You know, about 7 assets were sold.
Right.
So those guys are going through their field development plans, and they will invest. They're locals with international partners. They'll make investments, but even then that investment has to be timed correctly so that the PIB doesn't adversely impact them. But the other transactions you're seeing, or you're hearing about the ConocoPhillips sale, which was announced last year. You're hearing also about Total sold its assets. And then most recently, you heard about Petrobras announcing that it was also going to sell its Nigerian assets. The ConocoPhillips announcement was instructive because it mentioned about 2 or 3 regions where it was pulling out, where its total production was less than 50,000 barrels, and it was rolling that investment to other parts of the world where they were getting $500 million in terms of daily production potential. So clearly, other things are happening around the world that's making them come out. But what the sort of investments you will see in Nigeria are the Nigerians who've bought those assets who might then continue to invest.
Well, we'll see how things play out. But final word, tomorrow I guess we'll find out what happens. But how prepared do you think the security forces are already? We've seen, like I said, relative stability over the last 2 years.
I wouldn't bet too much on the security forces. From experience, the militants, the Boko Haram, the armed robbers, they tend to have an advantage against our security people. They tend to be less proactive than you expect. So for me, and the peace we've had in the 2 years is more because of the amnesty. It's not because of enforcement.
So it's more political
because of detection. Yeah. So for me, I will be concerned, and for the outlook for our sector and the national economy, I will be very concerned, because we have all this fracking, shale gas, African economies finding oil, Nigeria, no new investments, and then we introduce insecurity in the Niger Delta. The economic consequences may be serious.
I think we're just stuck in reverse. The only country making any noise about improving security in the region is actually the U.S. They've offered to help with dealing with pirates in the past. MEND is going to obviously be targeting larger installations, things that are offshore. So we're unwilling. Nigerian government is unwilling to receive external help, but it seems incapable of also providing a strong and intelligent response to this. So it is fairly worrying going down.
Recently, of course, there have been attacks on the impact of oil theft. So not the type of attacks that MEND is threatening, but clearly some people stealing oil. As a result, some oil producers have shut down production. How worried are you about this dynamic? Because now some people say we're at about 2.2 million barrels per day production levels. In fact, I heard recently that we may have dropped to below 2 million.
We actually did go below 2 million at some point in the last quarter. In the last quarter alone, ExxonMobil declared force majeure, ENI declared a force majeure, and Shell did the same thing on the Nembe Creek. Nembe Creek is about 300,000 barrels a day, and they're threatening to shut it down indefinitely. They just keep on doing repairs, they break them up again, and if that happens again, then you're going to see that significant drop in our daily production. So it is worrying, and again, right now there seems to be no response, and the IOCs will have no choice ultimately but to shut it down until there's some plan given to them by the government.
Right. Any political solution here with respect to MEND? How do we deal with this?
I think, clearly it's a political issue, but I'm worried because I see I think there's a lot more that we have to take into account. The run-up to 2015. A sitting president from the Niger Delta, who looks quite unpopular right now. and looks from a Niger Delta perspective is being hurried out of office by the North and the West. So the surrounding political background is a bit troubling, and therefore much of what we will do have to be in the political realm. Even the passage of the PIB,
Right.
it's a political issue, and it also falls into this regional scramble for power and resources. So you have that troubling political background. There's no clear political strategy to resolve it. There's no clear security strategy to resolve it, and therefore
the background to this, of course, like you mentioned, Henry Oka's sentencing in South Africa. I mean, how do you fix something like that? How do you?
I think the militants are not diplomats. They're not lawyers. They're people who must have imagined or assumed or hoped that somehow the Nigerian government will intervene with South Africa and ensure that Henry Oka doesn't go to prison. Henry Oka, from what I've heard, is a mentor figure, is a logistics provider, an inspirational leader of some sort. Right. For the disparate groups of militants in the Niger Delta. This is what they all have in common. And so, from their point of view, he's not insignificant.